Queen Elizabeth I was born on the 7th of September, 1533, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. Her father was disappointed by the fact that she was a girl because he already had a daughter by his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, and wanted a son to succeed him as monarch. After her mother was executed when she was 2.5 years old, she was declared illegitimate like her half-sister Mary. During the next 8 years of her life, she had a quick succession of stepmothers. The first, J.U. Seymour, gave birth to the long-awaited son named Edward. Then there was Anne of Cleves, who was divorced for unclear reasons. Then there was Catherine Howard, who was beheaded on grounds of treason. And finally there was Catherine Parr. Elizabeth showed remarkable intellectual talent in her high education, and by the time she reached adulthood she could speak 5 languages fluently. Queen Elizabeth's father died in January of 1547, and her 9-year-old brother became king. King Edward's cousin, Thomas Seymour, was jealous of his position and devised a plot to boot him off the throne. This scheme cost him his life. He wished to marry the then 15-year-old Elizabeth, who could have been put on the throne by force after Edward's impeachment. But then it was illegal for an heir to the throne to marry without the consent of the present king. Elizabeth successfully defended her innocence, although it's unclear of whether she actually knew of the plot or not, and successfully escaped imprisonment for the time being. In the summer of 1553, Edward died of prolonged ill health, and Elizabeth's half-sister Mary rose to the throne. Mary was a devout Catholic and was suspicious of her Protestant half-sister. She eventually managed to imprison Elizabeth on the grounds of treason for the previously mentioned incident. Elizabeth was held captive at the Tower of London for 2 months and then was sent to Woodstock Manor in Oxfordshire, where she was kept for a year. The house itself was so uninhabitable that she had to live in the servants' quarters. On the request of Mary's husband, King Philip of Spain, Elizabeth was finally allowed to return to her childhood home of Hatfield in Hertfordshire. The king was aware of Mary's poor health and wanted to ensure peaceful relations between England and Spain should Mary die and Elizabeth rise to the throne. Upon Mary's death, Elizabeth finally rose to the throne on the 17th of November, 1558. Glad to be free of her long imprisonment, she was determined to live life to its fullest. Elizabeth played many sports, hunted, and could even play the virginals and lute. She was particularly fond of theater, and attended many of Shakespeare's new plays. In the following month, she re-established the Protestant Church of England and restored the debased coinage. She also became the supreme governor of the church, as opposed to supreme head as her father had been.
However, due to the Catholic-Protestant split, she was forced to be harsher towards Catholics. Throughout her reign, floods of marriage proposals came in, and although she accepted none, she did come close to matrimony twice. Queen Elizabeth also had a reputation as a political genius. For example, she would use her single status to draw enemies in by hints of marriage, or would frighten her enemies by suggesting marriage to one of their opponents. Because she was unmarried and childless, succession was uncertain. However, having a child may have not been the solution to all problems. According to the majority of the Catholics, Elizabeth was illegitimate and Mary, Queen of Scots, was the rightful Queen of England. Plots to put Mary on the throne would have been made regardless. This may have been especially true after Elizabeth imprisoned Mary after she fled Scotland following her disastrous rule. Queen Elizabeth did this for Mary's own safety as well as to minimize the threat she posed. Mary was imprisoned for almost 20 years, during which time Elizabeth would not hear of the execution of Mary, who was her cousin. Against her own will, she finally had Mary executed on the 8th of February 1587. Meanwhile, relationships between her and King Philip, who now ruled Spain, had become friendly enough, but had deteriorated over the years. By 1588, they were first-rate enemies. In the summer of 1588, he sent the Spanish Armada by having better tactics and designs in addition to sheer luck. The English soundly defeated them. After this triumph, Elizabeth's triumph reached its zenith.
Elizabeth had the mind of a political genius and nurtured her country well throughout her rule. She remained wise in her decisions, cautious in her actions for her country, and perhaps above all remained determined but not obstinate, carefully listening to and judging advice. She remained so until her death at Richmond Palace on the 24th of March, 1603.